John O'Brien is the president of Catholics for Choice, and there is a battle over contraception now, in addition to the battle over abortion that we're all too familiar with. And John, really great to talk to you about this topic.
Great to be here from Washington, D.C. today.
So tell me a little bit about Catholics for Choice has a slightly different view on contraception and on choice than does what I think many consider to be kind of the mainstream Catholic Church positions. Tell me a little bit about that. And also the thing I'm really curious about is, are groups like yours looked at negatively by the so-called mainstream Catholic Church?
It's very important to recognize is that Catholics use contraception here in the United States and in other parts of the world. 98% of Catholic women have actually used a method of contraception that the Vatican doesn't like. So Catholic women use contraception, they have abortions, they're pretty much regular folks. The difference is that the Catholic hierarchy decided a long time ago to be against contraception. They're against the ability of people to control their own fertility. And, you know, when you look at their interventions in public policy, here lobbying in Washington, D.C., they seem to be obsessed and stuck in the pelvic zone because it's issues that are of a sexual nature that they seem to have an extraordinary investment in, convincing policymakers to basically deny people an ability to control their own fertility. What happened recently was that the Institute of Medicine, in its wisdom, decided that contraception should be included as part of health insurance coverage. This is a very important benefit for women in the United States, especially when you think about the fact that we're in an economic downturn. People are finding it more and more difficult to make ends meet. So this means your contraceptives can get covered. What the bishops have done is they've launched a massive lobby of the Obama administration and Health and Human Services to wait for this, to deny Catholic workers at Catholic institutions the ability to be able to get that contraceptive covered as part of insurance. So having failed to convince Catholics not to use contraception, the bishops are now trying to legislate us through the Obama administration and trying to get the Obama administration to, how would you put it, to basically infringe upon people's personal, religious, and sexual beliefs by being the arbiter of people's consciences on behalf of the bishops. It really is quite outrageous that the bishops are trying to get away with this, but it's just the latest in a series of battles about conscience or so-called refusal rights.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing is, I get emails. We're on a lot of college radio and college television stations. We have a big young audience, and I get emails all the time when we talk about religion, which we inevitably do very regularly. And a lot of young people say, you know, it's not that I moved away from the religion of my parents because I'm against spirituality or the idea that maybe there is a God, but it's because it just seems not realistic. There seems to be no grasp of the reality of how people actually are living when you listen to many of the requests, and maybe demands is sometimes a better word, of the religious authorities. Is this one of those examples where you're going to alienate a lot of the people that maybe otherwise would still consider themselves followers?
Catholics, you know, have been doing it for themselves for a long time. Catholic men and women understand that the dictates of the hierarchy are not based upon the reality of their lives. And surprisingly, there's a lot of ignorance about Catholicism. People believe that, those Catholics, they have to do whatever the Pope tells them. There's only three things in Catholicism that are infallible, on which the Pope's infallible, and they do not include contraception and abortion. So Catholics can, and look at any statistics, they do, dissent from what the hierarchies say. I don't think it makes us at all bad Catholics. Good Catholics use contraception, and good Catholics make decisions in good conscience, about these difficult issues. And as Catholics, we're actually required to follow our consciences. So in many ways, the majority within the church, the people within the church, because we don't define churches just those 350 members of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. We regard the church as being all the people, and the majority of those people are very clearly in disagreement with the bishops on these issues. So Catholics and Catholics like myself, we feel very confident that we represent what is the true lives as lived as Catholic as opposed to imagined from the lofty heights of the Vatican.
So let me go back to one of my initial questions, which is your group, Catholics for Change, and other groups like it, which may be slightly more progressive Catholic groups, are they looked upon negatively by that mainstream Catholic hierarchy?
Well, I'd actually take issue with you, because I'd actually say that the mainstream within the Catholic Church is the majority of people. I do work then in places like the Philippines, and next week I'm heading to Kenya in Africa, and we do a lot of work in Europe and Latin America, and in places like Argentina, which is looking at changing its abortion law. I'd actually say the mainstream in the Catholic Church are actually people who have a much more realistic view of issues around sexual and reproductive health.
No, I understand that. I don't disagree with you on that. I agree that I'm not saying the majority of Catholics hold these views, but I think the question still remains, which is that which in conventional wisdom is considered to be the rule from above certainly differs with Catholics for Choice, and therefore is that hierarchy disappointed, angry with a group like yours?
I think that the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and some uber conservative Catholics certainly are very vocal in their disapproval of those Catholics who follow the Catholic tradition in using our consciences as the final arbiter in moral decision making. So yes, they're a bit mad about it. But I really think, what's important within our church is characterized by unity in diversity. It's like a family, and at a family with Thanksgiving coming up, I'm sure everybody's aware that not everybody gets on well all of the time. And sometimes at Thanksgiving, not everybody is talking to everyone else. Our church is a family, and very often ordinary Catholics find themselves in disagreement with the bishops, especially considering their investment of all the wealth that we actually have from a social justice point of view, to be going around trying to stop Catholic workers or workers at Catholic institutions getting access to contraception. That seems like a real waste. So when the bishops do that, and they don't speak for us, and naturally they do get a bit annoyed when Catholics speak out and actually tell, especially legislators, what the reality is. One of the things that bothers me a lot these days is when you look at an administration like the Obama administration. The Obama administration set out to be a very progressive administration, an administration that they promised us that the decisions would be based upon science, upon medicine, not upon fiction. And yet here we see the Health and Human Services actually considering denying workers in Catholic places the ability to use their consciences and use contraception. They're even considering a broader exemption that will take it out to the multi-million-dollar charities that the Catholic hierarchy run with your taxpayer money. And so the idea that, hierarchy of the Catholic Church can have such a profound influence over politics, politicians, and ultimately the policies that should be determined by voters so that we can look after the health and welfare of our families.
All right. No, well, it's a huge issue, particularly in the current economic state. Absolutely crucial that contraception be covered. No question about it. We've been speaking with John O'Brien, president of Catholics for Choice. Really a pleasure to speak with you. Great to get a different perspective from inside the Catholic Church.
Thank you very much.